We first need to answer the question, what exactly is blended learning? Most of us have experience with traditional classrooms where the student travels from one physical location at a designated time to receive direct teacher-led instruction. Homework or work during the class time may come in the form of problems on a worksheet or teacher-led presentations in the classroom, but does not include online learning. On the other end of the spectrum, you may have taken an online course where all learning takes place online. This learning involves very little to no interaction with the educator. You can think of blended learning falling somewhere in the middle between traditional learning and online learning. Blended learning blends together the best of both worlds. It removes the restrictions of time and place off of the online component, and it keeps that personal connection of the face-to-face component that is lost with a pure online course.
Most traditional classrooms, the unspoken rule when you have a classroom with a wide range of ability levels is to just teach to the middle. The blended learning model allows technology to be your second, your third, your fourth co-teacher when used correctly. Although gaps in learning may not show when educators teach to the middle in a student's first few years of school, the data would suggest that the gap widens when students reach middle to high school years. Instruction within a traditional classroom puts a ceiling on the exposure of learning, whereas in a blended learning environment, exposure to connect learning lends itself naturally. To further explain this, in the traditional classroom, the educator has a wealth of knowledge in the content area. A textbook has knowledge, and perhaps you bring in a guest speaker to the class with a wealth of knowledge. But what exposure of the content that technology can bring is something that cannot come from any of the others. Students can connect their lived experience with technology by using social network tools. Blended learning fosters the idea of schools without borders. Can you imagine connecting to a classroom across the world on a unit to gain perspective from their point of view? By putting course materials online, instructors give their students the ability to review the materials at their own pace. The design of the blended course allows students to choose how they learn best.
So just like in any traditional classroom, you're presented the information chronologically, and you have the choice in the blended lab to kind of format it the way you want. So typically you're presented sources, like different sources that you can pick from. Like my personal preference is a certain database that we use. It's kind of like, you know, in my lab everyone knows that's the one that I use all the time. It's like my go-to source. And everyone else, you know, it has different opinions on it, which source they like to use best. But the point is that you're given choices, and like if you're given a graphic organizer, for example, you can fill it out with any of the sources that you're given. So the cool thing is you're given, you know, choices in that you can be independent in the way that you want to fill it out. And it kind of helps develop study habits that you wouldn't get in the traditional classroom.
We no longer have a high demand for factory workers from the industrial days, which require very little creativity, innovation, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. We have to ask ourselves, are we truly preparing students to become future-ready learners in a traditional learning environment? Students will likely work with many different people from many different cultures throughout their careers. Technology devices will change, and the demand for employees for jobs that haven't even been created yet will rise. But the skills required to adapt to quickly changing methods will not change. Students in blended learning are taught how to work collaboratively with others, how to manage time, how to problem solve, and how to use resources to support their work.
So I really feel that for business, for college, for career readiness, it's just something, it is building a habit of mine. I need to emphasize that it's a practice that has to be, gone through like anything else. You build your stamina, you build your focus, but blended gives you the opportunity, gives the learner the opportunity to practice that with some guidance and support, and then move forward in that independent learning that is a celebration of the future to come for them. So it definitely does that.
I love to think of myself as some sort of expert in the field, but the truth is our learners get so much more out of discovery on their own. I can spark a level of interest right here, and this is what I know. But Blended allows them to come into this lab in a separate location that's got themselves away from me, and they are digging in. This is empowering to them because it's not about me holding their hand and walking them through. So one of the greatest things that we're doing here is we are empowering the learners to discover, to find their discipline. And I couldn't do that in the traditional classroom. So it's preparing our learners to take charge.
The main benefit, in my opinion, would be the controlled freedom that we have in a sense, because the teachers get to give us coursework and they structure the assignments that we have and what we do in a sense, but we get to choose what we want to do while still learning the content, so it's kind of hard not to be engaged, and it kind of makes it fun.
It also, you can use the technology and your textbook and the teacher all at once, so you kind of create your own personalized learning experience, and you can learn as much as you want to, but the teachers won't let you slack off either.
When you are deciding the type of blended learning model that works best, it is important to know if you are sustaining innovation by starting with the traditional classroom and then seeing how online learning environments can improve, or is it disruptive innovation that you are trying to achieve by starting with the online and then imagining how the traditional classroom can enhance it. In the diagram, you can see the types of blended learning models: rotation model, flex model, a la carte model, and the enriched virtual model. Within the rotation model, there are 4 types of rotation: rotation stations, lab, flipped, and individual rotations. As with any initiative, you will want to assess the cost up front for the types of blended learning you wish to pursue. You will need to consider the cost of technology, space, and personnel. Now, you can always get creative if you feel there isn't a lot to invest up front. For example, if you are a one-to-one campus but do not have a space for a blended learning lab due to high enrollment, then ask yourself, how can I maximize the use of modular furniture and space outside of the 4 walls of my classroom? If personnel is a concern, think of ways to maximize technology for monitoring by using Google Hangouts or Skype, or talk to your team about conference time rotations on lab days. Once you have collected data to support the effectiveness of the program, more people within your campus will want to take part, which will add personnel options to be considered as well. Be creative or ask other districts or institutes for ideas specific to your needs. One example of how you might see the organization of a macro-level team would be the assistant superintendent over curriculum and instruction, who would oversee the work of the district-level content directors, the district-level instructional technology specialists, and the campus-level instructor, who will give birth to the idea of the micro or campus level. This is an example of some key people to get the program off the ground and running. One of the first items to address as a team is defining what is a blended learning look like in your district or campus. You can Google a wide range of blended definitions, but you will want to be cognizant of all your stakeholders and the people who you're going to be selling this to. Additionally, you will want a definition that just fits, one that fits your district, your campus, your community. Second, the core team will need to develop blended learning policies and guidelines. If your district has not already developed digital citizenship expectations, you will want to have this established prior to launching a blended learning program. Guidelines will need to be created in order to maintain the integrity of the blended program. For example, The same set of norms for collaboration and participation should be mirrored in the virtual and the face-to-face learning environments. Third, you will want to assess your curriculum design. To design an effective course, I recommend using the Understanding by Design framework developed by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe. Finally, you will want to provide teachers with professional learning experiences on how to run a successful blended course. Professional learning should be ongoing and checkpoints should be built in along the way to assess the effectiveness of the program and to identify areas of growth. Make sure that time is set aside to reflect on the data collected from the checkpoints. This is a critical step to ensure everyone remains calibrated and instruction remains aligned. Before you begin designing your Stage 3 course content, you should do inventory on what content you already have. Course materials should be organized by the scope and sequence in which you plan to teach. If you are starting from scratch, there are different ways to collect materials. One way is to purchase content already put together and adapt the materials to meet the needs of your students. You can also curate content by piecing together various resources on the web. Make sure that when you are designing the online lessons, you will want to avoid turning the online portion of the class into a collection of lecture-style training videos. The blended learning model allows you to remove the borders of the classroom and extend into the community and even into the world. You will want to design lessons to support community and global connections. Ask yourself, how can this model make the impossible possible in my learning environment? This model allows students to collaborate with and share resources to really deepen their learning of the objective. Can you imagine being 15 years old and having a passion for the medical world? And just by a click of the button, you're able to Skype or Google Hangout with a doctor in your community or even in another country? The sky's the limit when lessons are designed with purpose and intentionality.